Welcome to NarrativeNook audio tales where enchanted stories come to life. If you enjoy our stories, please subscribe, like and share to support our channel. Enjoy listening.
Eva remained silent. She had that talk with Louis the night before. Eva, you're beautiful enough to marry any other wealthy man you want. You don't have to obsess over Louis. Lucy took a step back and pleaded, please. I don't want to make things ugly, especially not with the Gilmores. Eva met Lucy's eyes as she said icily, but he doesn't like you. Lucy's face fell. What did you say? How did you know that? Because he told me I'm the only one he loves. He won't fall for anyone else. Not ever, Eva answered calmly. Miss Constantine, you won't be happy marrying a man who doesn't love you. How can you be sure he doesn't like me? I've known him for years. He fell for me 5 years ago and has been waiting for me to return his feelings since then. I'm not trying to brag, but he really loves me. Eva was trying to dissuade Lucy from pressing on with the marriage. She couldn't leave him behind now, not when the alternative was this woman. If Louis would hold on, then so would she. Why you? Lucy's face turned red from anger. She would have laughed it off had any other woman said that, but not Eva. Lucy knew whatever she said was the truth, after all. Eva, beauty fades with age. He won't stay in love with you once you lose your beauty. Eva blinked. But at least he still likes me now. Anyway, I'll be taking my leave now. I'm busy. With that, she got up and left. Lucy was left alone, feeling humiliated. She's showing off, huh? I bet he won't stay in love with you if you lose that pretty face of yours. Just then, her face was contorted with envy. And I'm going to ruin that face. Eva emerged from the coffee shop, basking in the warm sunshine. It felt like a weight had been lifted off her shoulders. She wanted to call Louis to tell him she would accept his love. The moment Louis exited the conference room, his assistant happily reported, President Gilmore, I heard Eva came. A smile tugged his lips as he whisked out his phone to call Eva. The call went through easily. Hello? You're here? Yes. Come to my office. I'm just here to talk about the contract termination. So, I'm not going up there, she replied. What am I going to do with her? He thought to himself in resignation before descending the building to see her. At the same time, Eva was in the legal department, talking to the manager. The manager was in a dilemma. He didn't have enough clearance to handle her contract termination, but she wouldn't let him leave without a result. If you're not giving me an answer, then we'll have to do it by the book. Eva was in a pure white dress, and her eyes were filled with determination. The intensity of her gaze was enough to intimidate most people. Please, Eva. You know there's nothing I can do about this. I can't do anything without the boss orders. I don't have the authority to handle anything related to you. I don't care. You're printing the contract, then I'll sign the papers, Eva said. Fine, I'll print it out. I can do that much. The manager was about to send someone to print the contract, but then he saw his boss at the office's doorstep. His eyes shone with hope as he stood up. President Gilmore, you've come just in time. Eva heaved a sigh. He came to stop me again, didn't he? I'll handle this. You do your work, Louis said. The manager scooted off immediately. Louis turned his attention to Eva. One look into her eyes, and he knew she wouldn't stand down. He took a seat and faced her. If you stay, you can have whatever you want, he said, trying to persuade her to stay. Eva blinked. Anything? Really? Yes, you can ask for anything. Other than contract termination, of course. In that case, give me your shares, she proposed. Louis was stunned for a moment. You want to manage the company? Is that a no? She cocked her eyebrow. Of course not. I can give it to you if that's what you want, he replied. But the pressure would be great. I would like to ask you a question. If you were to give me your shares, does that mean the Constantines can't have it anymore? She asked seriously. A smile tugged at his lips. Oh, so you're worried about me, is that it? Don't worry. I can settle this. How? They really want this plot of land, but they don't have enough connections to get it. However, I do. I'll talk to them. They'll have two choices, either they get the plot of land, or they get my shares. The latter of which can't be liquefied. Don't worry, Ava. Euphoria welled within his eyes. Louis narrowed his eyes and approached her. But I'm happy you're concerned about me. She fixed her gaze on him. After a moment of staring at his face, she felt like she was being hit by a dizzy spell and could feel stars spinning around her. Even though she had seen many handsome actors in her career, they never made her heart race. Louis was the only one who had that effect on her. Let's go to my office. He got up and extended his hand. Eva held his hand and let him lead her to his office. There had been a rumor spreading around the company. It was about her going to marry Louis soon, and the fact that they were holding hands right at this moment just gave credence to this rumor. She didn't like coming to his office. One of the reasons was that she wanted to stay away from him. The other reason was that he was still her boss, and she would still feel intimidated by him. He handed her his cup. Here, use my cup. She took it and approached the French window to take in the view. I've never realized that the view here is so beautiful. All of a sudden, Louis hugged her from behind, and it made her stiffen up a little. I still can't get used to this show of affection, especially when we're not at home. My place tonight, he whispered into her ear. Eva mused over it for a moment before nodding. Sure. He heaved a sigh of relief. Finally. She's finally let go of the past, and we can now move forward. Despite their precautions, some fans still caught Julian and Jesse's trip to the amusement park on camera. They didn't disturb the couple, though they still posted the pictures online. Eventually, those photos had gone viral. Everyone who saw those images had only one thing that crossed their mind. This looks like something straight out of a romance novel. The guy was tall, muscular, and handsome, while the lady was petite and cute. Jesse's height only reached about Julian's neck. This was the perfect height difference. It was something that usually showed up in novels and comics. I've always thought they'd make a cute couple. This proves it. Can't wait for their new show. I'm going to watch it as soon as it comes out. Jessie saw the photo when she was scrolling through her phone. Even she was shocked at it. So, that's how we look together? Am I always looking this slim? I never knew that. He's so tall, making me look like a damsel beside him. In any case, I'm going to save this pic. Can't help but love this pic so much. With that, she ended up making that picture her wallpaper. She was going to try out her bridesmaid gown that afternoon, and she wondered if Julian would show up. After having lunch, she and her family went to a high-end boutique. Everyone's attention was on Queenie. The old Manson couple had come with them. The two families came to try out the clothes they would wear during the wedding. Jessie was with her sister, who tried out the new gown she ordered. With some assistance from the retail assistant, she managed to change into it and emerged from the room for everyone to see. You look gorgeous in it, Queenie, Jessie praised. Really? I love this gown, too. Queenie nodded in approval. Okay, I'll go with this as my main gown, then. Queenie had too many choices to choose from, but in the end, she finally made her decision. Then, it was time for Jessie to try out her bridesmaid gown. She went with a violet dress made of fine gauze that showed her beauty while maintaining a certain air of mystery about her. She looked great in that dress. Innocent and beautiful. She was admiring herself in the mirror when someone showed up behind her. At first, she thought it was her hallucination, but when she turned around, she was greeted by Julian. The guy had his hands in his pockets. He was looking at her with his gaze filled with approval and delight. "How do I look?" Jessie spun around sheepishly. The confidence she had earlier faltered when she stood before him. She always felt inadequate whenever she was around him. She felt insecure, fearing that he might think less of her. "You look gorgeous. Stunning, even." He wasn't stingy with his praise. Her cheeks burned at his compliment. Then, she asked, "Have you tried your suit yet?" "Yes, I have. It was not bad, I think. A shame I didn't get to see it." She was slightly dejected for missing the chance to see him in his suit. "You'll get to see it during the wedding. It's in 3 days. We're not in a rush." He smiled. "Leave something for the imagination." Even without seeing it, Jessie knew Julian would look good in any shirt. However, that wasn't the only thing on her mind. She also wondered what he looked like without any clothes on. She blushed furiously upon thinking of that. The Silversteins and Mansons had dinner that night. Julian was there as well. The elders returned home after dinner while the kids went around town. Queenie, however, couldn't stay out for too long, so Nigel took her home. In the end, Julian and Jessie went on a little date. She showed him that photo and compared their height. "Am I that short?" She puffed her cheeks indignantly. "Well, I have no complaints about it." He then pulled her into his embrace. "You're my cup of tea, after all." And that made her feel better. The next morning, all the guests who had time to spare came to the island for some sightseeing as they waited for the wedding to begin. The Presgraves were already there. A little girl in a regal dress was running around on the grassy plains. Willow was all ready too, and she was as lively as a rabbit. No longer did she need anyone to hold her in their arms. She would much prefer to go around on her own. Behind her, her father and brother stood. She was giggling as she ran. Sometimes she would turn around to look at her family. A woman in a black dress was following her closely, and she glimmered like a gemstone under the sun. "Mommy, Mommy." The girl turned back and trotted up to her mother when she realized Anastasia wasn't following. Anastasia waited for her. When Willow came near, she hunkered down and picked the exhausted girl up. Willow might be small, but the length of her hair had already reached her shoulders, and it was thick enough to braid. All the guests looked at them enviously. What a happy family. The wedding, as stated, was held 3 days later. Romance filled the air, heralding the coming of a grand event. The Silversteins, who came 2 days earlier, rested for a day. Jessie and Queenie went around the island with their mother. Julian could only make it 1 day before the wedding because of his work. Jessie and Queenie stayed with their parents while Nigel and his parents were welcoming the guests. They were too busy to do anything else for the moment. And then, the day of the wedding came. A blanket of fog draped over the ocean, lending an air of mystique to the island. However, the mist bade a silent farewell the moment dawn broke through the horizon. A layer of humidity hung in the air, dancing with the scent of flowers. It spruced up the emotions of everyone on the island. Jessie helped Queenie put her makeup on. She looked great after having a good night's sleep. Then, it was Jessie's turn to put on her makeup. Most of the guests had arrived, taking up all the villas on the island. In the villa where the Presgraves stayed, Anastasia picked her sleeping daughter up. Willow had a habit of sleeping in. She wouldn't sleep at night, that was why. However, this wedding was important, and Anastasia would not let her daughter be tardy. Willow's cheeks were chubby and soft, and her eyelashes were long and curly. Her lips were puffed up, and her skin was gleaming. Her hair was black and thick, but was unkept from sleep. Anastasia changed her into the pinkish-purple tutu and paired that up with a white shirt. She looked adorable, but the girl was still not awake. She was still lying on the couch while her mother did her hair. Eventually, Anastasia took her out of the room and gave her to Elliot. Once she was in the embrace of her father, the girl slept even better. Elliot couldn't resist kissing his daughter's cheek. Ever since Willow was born, he had changed a lot. He spoiled his daughter to no end, and she became the most important thing in his life. She was like a modern princess, loved by her whole family, and even her brother spoiled her as well. Her brother had never raised his voice around her or bullied her. In fact, she was the one who would play tricks on him now and then. It's almost 9 a.m. We need to go. Don't want to be late. Anastasia emerged from her room, wearing a dark blue dress for the wedding. She looked elegant and almost royal. Elliot didn't want to miss the wedding either. He held up his daughter and emerged from the villa with his wife. Then, they got into a car and went to the church. Jessie had arrived at the church. She got out of the car and saw Julian talking beside the grassy plains. He was wearing a bow tie, looking handsome in it. He landed on the island late at night the night before, so she didn't have the chance to meet him until now. Now that she finally saw him, it filled her with delight. She approached him. "I'll be in the waiting room with Queenie." He nodded in acknowledgement. "Sure. Come back when you're done." Jessie then took Queenie to the waiting room. The Mansons were there as well, and Jessie's mother was present too. "All right, I guess I can slack off a little. The wedding starts at 9:30 a.m. I have half an hour to spare." With that thought in mind, she descended the stairs and saw Julian waiting for her beside the grassy plain. Her dress billowed in the wind, and the sea breeze danced with her hair. Julian thought she looked just like a fairy who descended from her home in the skies. They strolled down the path of the garden. The groups of guests were having fun in the distance, and roses bloomed on both sides of the path, celebrating the wedding that was to come and the love that was blooming. The couple said nothing, but they could feel romance hanging around them. Jessie spaced out and found her heels stuck in the cracks of the rock path. She gasped as she lost her balance, and Julian pulled her into his embrace. She put her hands on his shoulders, her breathing labored. Then, their eyes met. The love between them was almost palpable. There was no exchange between them, none was needed, as all was understood. "After the wedding is over and after our show wraps up, let's also hold a wedding like this, all right?" Julian spoke of the wish he had. Surprise glinted in Jessie's eyes. She wanted to have the kind of wedding her sister had as well, and now he was willing to give her just that. "Sure." She nodded, anticipation filling her eyes. He looked at the time and pulled her up. "We should go now. Don't want to be late." "Oh, right. Almost forgot." Her cheeks blushed. She held his hand and trotted all the way to the side door of the church. Julian let her pull him along to the church. "It feels like we're running toward our happily ever after." They still had 10 minutes left when they returned to the waiting room. Queenie looked at her sister and Julian, and she smiled as she thought, "Seems like she has found her happily ever after as well." "That's great. It's just like what I imagined. We're marrying men who are coincidentally good friends with each other. That'll strengthen our bond." 5 minutes left, Miss Silverstein. "Get ready." The makeup artists and their assistants were helping Queenie with her makeup while Jessie was holding her sister carefully. Julian, on the other hand, went to the groom's waiting room. The Presgraves were seated at the first table. Finally, Willow stretched her arms. She was woken up by the noise around her. Once she opened her eyes, the girl quickly sat up and held her father tightly. Elliot patted her shoulder and said, "Calm down, sweetie." The girl was a brave one. She looked around, and her attention was immediately focused on the candies on the table. Right away, she took a bag of it and held it tightly like a rabbit worried about its food getting stolen. Anastasia saw that, and it amused her. She's safe in her father's hands, but she probably thinks someone will steal her candy anyway. She then turned her attention to Nigel, who looked dashing in his suit. She was reminded of her own wedding. It's been 3 years. Time flies. And then, it was time. The tune of Wedding March echoed across the hall, and the gates swung open. One gorgeous bride stood outside, the sun gleaming down on her. She emerged from the beam of light like an angel bearing happiness. Her bliss spread to all her guests, and even Willow was astounded by her beauty. She leaned on the table and stared at the lady who just came in. Queenie held her father's arm as she slowly marched toward the stage. Jessie followed behind them. Queenie's face was covered with a veil, but everyone could still see how beautiful she was. The bride's gorgeous. Indeed. The Mansons are so lucky. Brenda was crying tears of joy as well. They're finally getting married. Now, I can rest easy. After Queenie ascended the stage, Nigel extended his hand to hold her. She's pregnant. Can't let anything happen to her. Brandon teared up and handed his daughter's hand to Nigel. He then patted Nigel's hand. Take good care of her, Nigel. Nigel gave Brandon a look of determination. Yes, father. I will love her and protect her all my life. That is good enough for me. With that, Brandon left the stage. He wanted nothing more than for his daughter to marry a good man. All he wanted was for her to live a peaceful life. Queenie teared up as well. Even after she was married, she would make it a point to visit her parents often. She wouldn't want them to feel lonely. For some reason, Jessie had the same thought as well. After I get married, I'll also make sure to visit Dad and Mom as much as I can. I don't want them to feel sad. I need to spend more time with them. Julian noticed Jessie wiping her tears away, and he gave her an understanding look. If they weren't in a church, he would have hugged her. The priest came forth and officiated the wedding. Eventually, the couple on stage exchanged their vows and hugged passionately. All the guests gave them thunderous applause. Queenie didn't toss her bouquet. Instead, she turned around and gave it to Jessie. Jessie blushed, but she took it happily anyway. Thank you for the blessing, Queenie. Jonathan made a speech to give the newlyweds all his blessings and hopes. The banquet began, and the guests were served lavish, beautiful dishes. Willow had a great time eating them. The girl sat in a high chair and let her parents feed her. At the same time, she kept holding on to her candies. Jared had grown into a handsome and dashing young boy. He stopped acting cute like how he used to. Now, he was more collected and mature. Once he was done eating, he took his sister away, leaving their parents alone so they could eat in peace. Queenie switched into a dress proper for the banquet, and Jessie changed into a shorter dress as well. She and Julian accompanied the newlyweds as they went around raising toasts to everyone. Queenie was a bit tired after all the toasting, so Jessie took her back to the waiting room. Nigel came in a while later with the drunk Julian tagging along behind him. He drank a lot. Most of those were supposed to be toasts for Nigel. Jessie, leave Queenie to me. You should take Julian back to his villa. He needs to rest. Look at him. He's drunk. Jessie nodded. Want me to hold you up? She asked Julian. I can still walk, he answered stubbornly, but the look on his face spoke otherwise. His fair-skinned face had a rosy hue to them, and she felt like biting him. They came to the corridor and made their way to the elevator. Then, he almost tripped over himself. She held him up. "Let me help." Just then, Julian leaned down, and their faces were millimeters away. Jesse's cheeks were set aflame. The moment the elevator opened, she dragged him into it. A driver was tasked to take them back. She told him where Julian stayed, and the driver took them all the way there. She was already huffing and puffing when she painstakingly took Julian back home. He was nearly 6 feet 2, and his size alone made it tough for her to drag him along. She wanted to let go of him the moment he hit the couch, but all of a sudden, he wrapped his arms around her and pulled her down. Caught by surprise, she fell into his embrace, and her heart skipped a beat. She raised her head only to be met by a pair of passionate eyes. Even without asking, she knew what he had in his mind. "Stay with me," said Julian hoarsely. I need to go back." "But Nigel told you to take care of me." "How should I go about that?" Jesse stammered. "I can't take care of you while locked in your arms. Just let me hug you for a while." With that, he held her tightly, refusing to let go. Quietly, she leaned on his chest. Silence swooped down on them, but her heart was still beating violently against her ribcage. "This is my sister's wedding. I can't believe I'm making out with him here." A moment later, she thought Julian might need some water, so she said, "I'll get you some water." "Sure," he replied. However, for some reason, Jesse's hair was tangled with his belt. A pang of pain shot through her head the moment she stood up, and she gasped. Immediately, she fell back to him once more. "My hair got tangled." After saying that, she tried to untangle her hair from his belt. Unbeknownst to her, Julian tensed up. Hoarsely, he asked, "Done?" "Not yet." Little did Jesse know that she was dangerously close to making him snap. The alcohol was already fuzzing his mind in the first place, and what she was doing now made things worse. She kept touching his belt and untangling her hair. When she was done, Julian looked redder than a cooked lobster, and his throat was parched. She got him a glass of water, and he gulped it down in one go. He then asked for another glass, and she poured another for him. Only then did he feel the fire within him die down a little. She put the cup down. "I should take you upstairs. You need to rest." He narrowed his eyes. "Sure." She took him upstairs. The alcohol was wearing off a bit, and his steps had more strength to them now. They entered his room, and Jessie noticed the curtains were open. Without much thought, she went over to draw the curtains, and the room went dim. Yet, Julian could still see the silhouette of her figure even with such poor lighting. Right then, he couldn't take it anymore. All he wanted was to rail her. He pulled her into his embrace, and when she turned around, he pressed his lips against hers. Time stopped for a moment for Jessie, her eyes widening with shock. However, she couldn't resist the kiss, not from him. Slivers of sunshine slipped into the room, lending it an element of warmth. With a voice barely counting as a whisper, he asked, "Can I do you?" She remained silent as she was overwhelmed with embarrassment. "How do you expect me to answer that?" "Well, I'd say yes, but I'm a lady. I need to keep up appearances," she thought to herself. She wanted him to do her, but she lacked the courage to ask him so. Before she could say anything, Julian pressed on deeper with his kiss, his hand touching her supple lower back. At that point, Jessie surrendered herself to him, letting him take her for a ride. For a moment there, she forgot her sister's wedding was still ongoing. Jessie could taste the taste of alcohol in her mouth. It came from Julian. Every breath he exhaled was filled with his almost scalding warmth. The alcohol still lingered in his system, so he spoke in a way that was out of his usual character. "Oh, you feel hot. Did you have too much to drink as well?" "No, I am hot because you're making me hot and bothered." "No, I didn't," she stammered. Just then, his phone rang, and she pushed him quickly. "Hey, someone's calling you." However, he didn't stop kissing. He huffed, "Ignore it. It's nothing important." Unfortunately for him, the phone wouldn't stop ringing. The only way to make it stop was for him to take the call. It must be important. Or else it would have stopped ringing by now. "You should take the call." She shoved him away, huffing and puffing. If it's important and he misses it, it'd be bad. Julian stared at the phone with hatred and fury in his eyes. For a moment, he was seized by the urge to toss it out the window. Damn it. This has better be important, or else. He eyed the caller ID for a moment and took the call impatiently. "What is it?" "Young Master Julian, someone just informed us your car got scratched," Ashley said, apparently panicking. "God damn it. Next time, you settle this yourself. You call me because of something inconsequential like that again, and I'll cut your pay," he roared and tossed his phone away after hanging up. Jessie blinked. "Oh, was that Ashley?" "No, I can't let him cut her pay. She's a nice lady." She approached him and wrapped her arms around him. Softly, she consoled, "All right, calm down now." Julian sobered up a little just then, as he was afraid that he might have frightened her with his shouting just now. He pressed his forehead against hers. "Did I scare you?" "What? The fact that you kissed me, or the fact you yelled at Ashley?" Jessie smiled. A chuckle escaped his lips. "This is all your fault." "How is that my fault?" She blinked innocently. "You kissed me, and that's supposed to be my fault?" "How?" "Because you're too pretty." I couldn't hold myself back. "You're not cutting her pay. She's a hard-working assistant, all right?" Jessie said solemnly. Julian gulped slightly at her serious tone. "Fine, I won't cut her pay." She heaved a sigh of relief upon hearing that. "Get some sleep. I'll head back and see if they need my help." I almost crossed the line. If Ashley hadn't called me, I might have left a bad impression on Jessie. Darn, I shouldn't have treated the first time so rashly. I don't want her to remember her first time as some sloppy sex during someone else's wedding, after all. He nodded after snapping out of his thoughts. "Sure. I'm fine now. You should head over and help them." Once Jessie was gone, he lay on the bed and called Ashley, who was still shocked after the call. "Young Master Julian? Don't worry. I won't cut your pay. Orville can deal with the car problem." "I see. Did I interrupt something, sir?" Her guess was correct. "What are you talking about?" he snapped. "You were with Miss Jessie, weren't you?" Julian was speechless. "She knows me well, huh?" He snorted. "If you ask one more stupid question, you're not getting paid this month." Quickly, Ashley said, "Please, no, sir. Pretend I said nothing. You two have fun." He hung up soon after. His mind was still replaying the scene of the earlier kiss, which sobered him up completely. Jessie returned to the ballroom, still looking red. Though, she composed herself once she got inside. However, she would still feel a little embarrassed every time she was reminded of that kiss. Queenie was enjoying her desserts when Jessie entered the waiting room. "Jessie." Queenie invited her to share the sweet stuff. "Come. I need someone to help me out with these." Jessie obliged. She sat down and enjoyed the desserts as well. Eating desserts is the happiest thing to do, she thought. Everyone else was in the ballroom, chatting the hours away. Jared and Willow were playing on the field outside with a group of bodyguards, keeping an eye on them. Birdie, Willow could make out some simple words now. She pointed at the birds flying overhead as she spun around in delight. Jared crouched down beside her, smiling. Do you like them? The girl nodded, grinning toothily. A gentle breeze whispered across the fields, and her hair clasped her chubby cheeks. It was an adorable sight to behold. Anastasia came out a while later and watched her kids play. They were her whole world. Now, she no longer wanted to expand her company. It was big enough and was running well. Because of that, she now had more time with her family. Mommy. Willow ran toward her the moment she saw Anastasia. She waddled like a little duckling as she ran. And then, she fell. Jared tried to pull her up, but Anastasia stopped him. Willow expected her brother or mother to come over and pick her up, but she realized Anastasia was looking somewhere else while Jared wasn't coming either. She puckered her lips and got back up herself, feeling a little miffed. However, that feeling went away with the wind. The girl clapped her hands and bravely went to her mother once again. Anastasia pretended she just saw Willow. She picked the girl up and kissed her cheek. Well done, Willow. The girl raised her hands. With the best effort she could muster, she tried her best to recount how much the grass had hurt her hand, trying her best to get her mother's consolation. Oh, did you hurt your hands? Here, I'll blow on it for you. Anastasia blew the girl's chubby hands and kissed them. Finally, the girl cracked a happy smile, and her slight grievance was finally sent off to the sea. The island felt particularly languid in the afternoon. Clear blue skies and vast calm seas. Lots of the guests took the chance to have fun in the ocean. The older guests took a nap and prepared for the wedding dinner. Queenie wanted to play as well, but she was in no condition for that. The first trimester was one of suffering as she couldn't eat or sleep well, things were hard on her. Nevertheless, she told Jessie to seize the chance to have fun. It wasn't every day she had a vacation, so she should make the most out of it. Get Julian. He can go with you. Dad and Mom are chatting with their friends as well. That was what Queenie told her. Jessie was in a sprightly mood. Sleeping was the last thing on her mind, she wanted to have fun. The moment Julian got her call, he came to see her. They took a stroll through the area with coconut trees before emerging on the beach. Since everyone was far away from them, they had the whole beach to themselves. Jessie gasped in surprise and charged to the beach like a happy child. Gilmore, you have to come down here. She called his last name by accident. The girl was too happy to notice that. Oh, I never did tell her how to address me. Guess that's why she thinks she can call me whatever she wants. I need to change that. He followed her onto the beach. Then, he crossed his arms and narrowed his eyes. What did you just call me? Asked Julian. Sheepishly, she said, sorry, I was a little too excited. She never called him by his last name. Most of the time, it would just be Mr. Gilmore. From now on, you're calling me Julian, he said imperiously. But I think Mr. Gilmore sounds good, too. No. You're calling me Julian. Proudly, Jessie nodded. Okay, Julian. Julian patted her head. Good. From now on, you're calling me that. Oh, he can be so bossy about everything when he wants. She nodded in acknowledgement. Then, she scooped up some seawater. Wow, it's not cold at all. It feels warm. Do you want to swim? She blinked. Can I? As long as you want it. Julian nodded. She was in a short dress, and they had no swimsuits lying around. Awkwardly, she said, I'll do it later. She returned to the beach and had all the fun she wanted. She frolicked around and kept kicking the waters. Eventually, she lost her footing and fell. Right away, she backed away and plopped onto the sand. Well, this is super awkward. Oh, no. I got sand all over me. Wash yourself in the waters, then, Julian suggested. Something twinkled in his eyes, and he gulped slightly. He thought she looked alluring when she was drenched. Jessie took that advice and slowly stepped into the sea. She stopped when the seawater got to her waist level. Then, she let it wash the sand on her body away. When she came back up, her dress was already sticking to her, accentuating her legs. We should go back now. I need to get changed. She's not wearing any shoes. Julian made a mental note to himself before crouching down. Get up. I'll take you back on my back. She held her heels and let him take her back to the villa. It was a peaceful stroll. The sun was shining, the birds were chirping. Jessie was leaning on Julian's back, feeling safe. They ran into a few waitresses and were recognized immediately. Oh my gosh. The waitress gasped. It's them. They look so good together. He's taking her on his back. I envy her. Jessie thought it was a bit daunting for Julian since he had to take her back to the villas. They were a few hundred yards away. However, instead of taking her back to her villa, Julian took her to his. She asked Lexi to get her a set of clothes. She was staying in the same villa as her parents, and she didn't want them to see the state she was in right now. That's why she asked for Lexi's help. I'll use your bathroom for a bit, Julian. She took her clothes and headed for the bathroom. Sure, he replied in acknowledgement. She wondered why he wasn't looking at her. Why is he looking away? In all honesty, he wanted to look at her. However, she would notice the desire in his eyes if he did. Jessie entered the master bedroom. Julian realized his phone was dead, so he went upstairs to get the charger, and it was then he heard Jessie showering in the bathroom. A current of electricity coursed through his body, and he took a seat on the couch, waiting for her. Then, he noticed something interesting. She forgot to take her clothes. Oh, does that mean I get to see something nice, then? She only realized she had forgotten her clothes after she was done showering. Oh, God. But thank goodness that Julian's downstairs. He's not here, so there's nothing to worry about. She covered herself with a towel and darted out of the bathroom. The moment she turned the corner, she saw Julian on the couch, and her clothes were right beside him. She exclaimed in her mind, "Holy moly! I thought he was downstairs. Why is he here? I need to take my clothes." She held her towel tightly, worried it might slip. He stared right at her, enjoying the beautiful sight in front of him. He picked her clothes up and handed them to her. Thinking he was just being nice, she happily took the clothes, but then he suddenly held her hand and pulled her into his embrace. She caught a whiff of his scent and felt everything around her spin a little. Didn't know he could be so cheeky. Julian, she started, though she never got to finish that sentence. He held the back of her head and pressed his lips against hers. She's so charming. I'd love to gobble her up right now. This is killing me. Jessie was holding her towel with both hands, which made things easier for him. She can't even push me now. Julian didn't push her any further, though. Once he had enough, he picked up his phone and charger. I'll be waiting downstairs. Even at night, the island glimmered and shimmered beautifully. The lighthouse and neon lights glowed the landmass up. The wedding dinner was a merry event as well. Everyone gathered and feasted with their friends. Some drank with their friends on the field outside. The guests who had families stayed with their families, while the younger people took this chance to date a little. Nigel and Queenie were talking to the elders while Jessie had run off. She wasn't someone who could sit still. Naturally, she went straight to the place of her lover. He was waiting for her at the corner where it was dimly lit. She trotted over to him like a little fairy who couldn't wait to date her lover. Her hair billowed in the air, her dress dancing with the breeze. Eventually, they met, and she tilted her head. Adorably, she asked, "Guess what I got you?"
Thank you for listening. If you have enjoyed this story, please like and share so others can see it too. Also hit the subscription button and notification bell so you can be notified on our next release. Thank you for your support. God bless you.